Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. I'm here in the Bangor yard, and just day after confirming a really good honey flow over in Hampden, just wanted to see how the honey flow is looking here in Bangor, and if any of these hives are ready for a honey super. So they're looking pretty good. These hives are on average much smaller than the ones at Hampden, but basically they're showing all the signs of some honey flow going on. Some hives are relatively small, so there's relatively little activity here, but you're seeing the fanning taking place, which is a sure sign of curing a lot of moisture. One thing about the fanning is they're controlling the temperature in the hive. This is how the bees control the temperature, by putting water droplets throughout the hive and fanning them furiously and creating an air current. See how all these bees are pointing in the same direction, fanning the air through the hive, so air is going in one side and out the other. This way they're curing the nectar that's in the hive, and when there's a honey flow on, you're going to see this sort of activity of the bees curing that nectar. Predominantly you'll see the bees fanning on one side more than the other side, and in some cases they're fanning right across the entrance. And when they're curing some types of honey, you can really smell the different types of honey that they're curing. Goldenrod in particular, a really funky smell. So this is in part due to the heat, but it's only 9 in the morning, but it's largely due to them curing large amounts of nectar in the hive. So I was just stopped by the Hampden yard, and the bees are very busy. Here they're much less busy. I would say we have a honey flow here, but not as strong as the one in Hampden. So let's open a few up and see which ones need honey supers, which ones don't. Look at this one first. A lot of these had a lot of extra space put on them when they're relatively small. Here's one as an example. So they're building up into a deep brood chamber. So this colony is growing, but it still has lots and lots of room in here. So they're building up into the brood chamber. They've got a long way to go. Queen's up here laying. I don't see an enormous amount of nectar stored up here, but this hive is concentrating on growth as opposed to storage of food. So it's a little way to go yet. We'll just let this one concentrate on expanding its deep brood chamber, because what I want is, as well as producing some honey, I do want to have lots of wax drawn out. And so my priority for that hive would be to get some wax drawn. And if we're lucky, we'll get a decent goldenrod flow from the hive. This brood chamber is coming along, or this deep box rather is coming along. I can see plenty of drawn comb here, filling up with honey, all full of honey there. Just drawn, mostly drawn. Well, actually drawn, or what is drawn, is filling up with nectar. Just to move this lesser drawn one into this side. So I think this one can take another honey super. Even though it's not so full of bees, there's plenty of bees downstairs, but this is really filling up with honey. I would say that this deep brood chamber weighs about, that's got about 35 to 40 pounds of honey in it. Small honey super going on top. Long way to go, not even going to look. It's way too hot to go poking about inside the hives as such. So all I'm doing right now is I'm working on the assumption that the brood chambers are fine, but I'm looking to see do they need room to expand. Plenty of room here. They're building. They don't need any further room. There's capacity in both of these hives to store 40-50 pounds of honey, so they need no further work. Let's have a look at this group. Unlike the Hampden yard, this yard is extremely variable in the size of the colony. Very little going on up here. Only just expanding into this. I'll say if it was warmer, I'd investigate as to why. I mean cooler, if I'd investigate further as to why, and maybe look at combining some colonies. But I'm not going to do it when it's getting 90, 95 degrees. Now this hive, on the other hand, it's got a honey super, which I put on about 8 or 9 days ago, and it looks mostly full. They're building this one out nicely. There's about 25 to 30 pounds of honey in there, needs a super. Good progress here, but plenty of foundation here still to draw out. I'll move some into the middle of the group part they are drawing out. In fact, this one's probably close enough. Could take a honey super. Again, I've got a checkerboard honey super here, half drawn comb, half foundation. So they'll come up here, get to work. Building that foundation, storing honey. out to here. And building right out to here. This looks great. This is certainly ready for another super frame foundation, another super. Notice I'm not going through these looking to shake the bees down from the upper brood chamber to make them a single brood chamber management. Right now, because of the heat, I'm not going to change what they're doing. Now it's going to cool down in a few days, and I may very well shake the queen down into the lower brood chamber, but for now I'll just put the queen excluder on below the honey super and run it as a double brood chamber, and perhaps later in the season, maybe in just a few days, I will change it to a single. I'm like wanting to run roughly half my hives as single brood chamber management and the other half is double brood chamber. I'm still experimenting with both methods and it's working pretty well for me right now. When I start new techniques, although this is not a new technique, but when I apply some of the new techniques, I don't apply it right across the board. What I do is I will apply those techniques in more of an experimental fashion and apply it to some of my hives and compare it with others to see how results have worked out. Because both the double brood chamber and single brood chamber management work extremely well, but I'm learning the nuances of it and what the best ways of doing the fine-tuning, and to do that you need a control groups. So basically my double brood chamber management is my control group. I've spent many years in biological research, and so I've got a fairly good grasp of why you need a control group to, and you don't just do everything, change everything all of a sudden. Building up nicely here, but we're not ready for another honey super here. My priority is to get comb drawn, all super foundation. I'm going to have plenty of hives producing honey, so I'll get more comb drawn where I can. Edge, lots of comb being built. most of it. I'll spread it out a bit further. Another one ready for a deep. I only brought a couple of deeps with me. About half drawn, plenty of honey, lots of comb in the process of being built. Plenty of brood in there. When the heat is on like this, there's plenty of heat. It's absolutely fine to break up the brood chamber a bit by moving foundation into the middle of it. When it's cold or early in the spring, you really shouldn't do that. This time of year, it's fine. Sometimes you don't have to spend much time doing your management. Coming on very nicely. Now I'm out of deeps, so I'll put a honey super on here. And that's ready too. Things are looking good. Put supers on, I'd say 8 or 9 of those hives, and some deeps on 2 of them. So things are coming along nicely. The honey flow on here, I wouldn't say it's anything like as strong as the Hampden yard, just by the activity here. That can be to do with the species of flower in bloom. Some flowers produce nectar later in the day than others, but it's still a honey flow and enough to build comb and produce me a nice little honey crop as well. So we will I'll keep an eye on levels here, but I think I'm good for roughly a week here with my honey supers, and I'll be harvesting honey pretty soon, because at this rate I'm going to run out of honey supers by the end of this week. So it's pretty soon it's time to extract, and then we'll put those supers back on again once I've emptied them. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time.